Welcome to Learn with Sawgrass. I'm Rhonda, the Education Manager here at Sawgrass, and we add 2 workshops per week right here in the Sawgrass Academy and YouTube to help you succeed with Sawgrass. We're going to talk about our printers, we're going to talk about our inks, we're going to tell you all about what makes Sawgrass different, we're going to teach you a lot about our software, and then hopefully along the way give you some inspiration and some business tips as well to help you succeed with Sawgrass. Now we are going to come to you, one of those workshops each week is going to be live. That is Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube. And then we also are going to drop another workshop middle to the end of the week that we have pre-recorded just like the one we're doing today. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out so that you can succeed with Sawgrass. Now you are probably thinking, Rhonda, that printer doesn't look like my printer. It looks taller, it looks a lot bigger in the back. What do you have going on? And that's exactly what we're talking about today. When you get a Sawgrass printer, whether it's the SG500 or the SG1000, it's not going to have this tray on the bottom and it's not going to automatically come with this tray on the back. But these are 2 ways that you can expand what you can do with your Sawgrass printer. So I want to introduce you to the bypass tray and to the option tray today and tell you what they can do. Now, just as a reminder before we get too far into this, when you get the printer, like I said, it doesn't come with the trays. It's just going to be the main tray on the front. If you have an SG500 and that's a North American unit, then that tray is going to go up to 8.5 by 14. And then if you have that European unit, that is going to go up to A4 in the main tray. Now with the SG1000, that is going to be 11 by 17 in the main tray. And then the European equivalent would be the A3 paper. So that's the ones you can use in the main tray. So like I said, this printer has both an option tray and a bypass tray. They do different things, so let's kind of delve into that. And we're going to start with the option tray. Now the first thing I want to tell you is that paper size wise, it's going to match the main tray. Both the main tray and the option tray on the printer are going to handle the same sizes of paper. I would say as a pro tip, if you are using smaller paper, mug paper, smaller, maybe you've cut some paper to even smaller than that, you want to go out the main tray. That's going to work better than going out of the option tray with that small paper. But the real reason that you want this option tray is it allows you to run 2 paper or have 2 papers in the printer at the same time. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One would be you typically operate with 2 different sizes of paper, 8.5 by 11 and 11 by 17, mug paper and 8.5 by 11 paper. And so by having those in there, you're not having to stop between jobs to change that out. You have both papers in there at all times. You're just making a simple switch of which tray you're printing to in the Sawgrass print utility, and everything works great for you. So that's one reason why you're going to do that. The other is usually it's when you're a VersaFlex user, you have 2 different types of paper. There are a couple other scenarios where you may be using Sublimation ink where you have 2 different papers, maybe heat transfer vinyl and a regular paper. But really for our VersaFlex users, this is going to simplify things because you can have your sublimation transfer paper in one tray and your VersaFlex slide in the other. Doesn't really matter which tray you put those in, but this way you're not having to change those out. So those are really the 2 cases for when that option tray is great. It's really when you're doing either two different sizes of paper a lot, or you're doing 2 different types of paper a lot, simplifies your life by not having to change those. Now the purpose of the bypass tray is different. This is really about giving you the capability of larger paper. Now I do want to say, if we're talking about the SG500, you were running longer paper. you're not running wider paper. That 8.5 is still your defining factor. You cannot go long or go wider than 8.5, even from the bypass tray on that SG500. Now, when we talk about our SG1000, you can actually go up to 13 by 19. So I'm going to pull this up and show you. I can put that super long paper in here and extend that out, and that's going to hold that nice and straight. And I can put that up to 13 by 19. Now, when we talk about either the SG500 or the SG1000, you're not tied to that length of 19. There are a lot of people who have been able with the 500 to get an 8.5 by 21 paper, but you actually can go to 55 inches. So you could even do a roll if you have a way of doing that on your own. We don't have an attachment for that. But if you can hold that roll or hold that longer paper, you can go really long. So what are we talking about when we talk about the SG500? I think of things that are really long, but are pretty narrow. So if you're doing a men's tie, if you're doing socks, if you're doing cheerleader bows, these are things that can really use that extra length that you're getting out of the bypass tray. When we're talking about the SG1000, well, now we're talking about larger prints for pillows, larger areas to do for a blanket. We're talking about placemats. We're talking about anything that's really surpassing that 11 by 17. And even if it's a larger shirt, you're able to get kind of a bigger design out of that too. So that's really the use for that bypass tray. So just a couple of tips and tricks before we go too far. You know, a lot of people with their bypass tray, they do have issues with it pulling the paper, and it's really figuring out how many sheets to put in there. You don't want to have just 1 or 2, you do want to have at least 5, and then you're probably going to stay under 20. So really in that 5 to 15 range is kind of the sweet spot for how many pages to put in there. It is very important that you are pulling this out and you are supporting that paper as it goes. This is going to make your life a lot easier to have that supported. You probably don't want to leave the paper out or in this tray. You probably do want to lay it on a table, store it, and not leave it because it does get a little floppy with humidity. So that's probably one of the big things that you want to watch with that. With the option tray, really nothing there. You know, it's just getting the paper in there and you're pretty set, and just doing what I always forget, which is remembering to change the tray when you go to hit print so you're not wasting paper. But that's really the big things. So we're ready to put that printer on the option tray or attach the option tray to the printer. We've already taken it out of the box and we've removed any of the tape. So you're just going to lift the printer and sit that down on top of the option tray, just making sure that lines up. And it clicks into place and you're ready to go. Okay, so one thing you do want to do is go ahead and turn that printer off and back on to make sure that it does register that that tray has been added. Okay, so we are ready to install our bypass tray. We have removed it from the packaging and we're ready to go. So 2 very important things to remember. There may be a piece of plastic that runs right along here on your printer that is going to block you from attaching this, so you do want to pop that off. The second thing that's going to be very important is this. This is the support bracket for the bypass tray. It comes well wrapped in plastic. So a lot of people don't realize that there's something in that bubble wrap and toss it. Do not toss it. This is a very, very important part of your bypass tray. It helps give it stability and helps it be able to pull the paper correctly. So this is going to attach to the bottom of the bypass tray. If we flip our bypass tray over, you're going to notice these 3 tabs. That's where these 3 tabs go. So I'm simply going to put my tabs in there, and then I'm going to snap this in on both sides, and now that's nice and attached and on the bottom. And now that's going to help us be able to put this on there and help keep it secure. Now, when you are putting your bypass tray on, you're going to push down both tabs at once, and that's what is going to make this possible. Now, when I do this, I always make sure that I'm lining up this little plug with the hole, and then I'm just going to tilt that in, let go, and I'm ready to go with my bypass tray. Now, one thing you do want to remember, like with the option tray, go ahead and turn it off and turn it back on just to make sure it has a moment to recognize that that's there. Okay, so let's talk about adding your option tray and your bypass tray as far as your system is concerned. Now, I am on a Mac, but it is going to be very similar. You're going to go to your printer utilities, and what you want to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose my printer. And the big thing you want to make sure is that those trays are attached. So in this case, it's options and supplies. And I want to make sure that my additional tray and my bypass tray are both selected. Now, in my Sawgrass print utility, I'm going to go in, I'm going to go down to my media source, and you're going to see both. So there's my tray 1, there's my option tray, and here's my bypass tray to choose where that comes from. Now, there are certain paper sizes, so if I were to tell it what I call bypass tray, but what is normally A3+, it's going to immediately choose the bypass tray because it knows that that is where it needs to come out of. Now, in my settings, if I go to my devices and I choose my printer, you're going to see that you can choose your default paper size and your default paper tray. So you don't immediately or necessarily, it doesn't have to default to 8.5 by 11 out of the main tray. I could start with another tray if that's where I'm going to print from the most. I love both the attachments. They're really handy to have, and I hope you get some use out of them too, and I hope you found this to be useful. Join us again. We're live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube, and then we'll be dropping another video each week as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.